The historical background of the Chicago School. The Chicago School of Thought is an economic school of thought that was founded mainly by one of the influential economists, Frank Heinemann Knight, around the 1930s. Chicago School of Economic Thought was originally developed by the members of the Department of Economics at the University of Chicago, and Knight was one of the members. In addition, besides Knight, Milton Friedman and George Stigler were the leading scholars and one of the best-known figures of the Chicago School. The Chicago School of Economic Thought is also a form of the neoclassical of economic thought that worked with the faculty at the University of Chicago between 1920s until 1930s. Some have constructed and popularized its principles. Many significant developments in economic thought since Marshall's time have sparked, or at the very least rationalists, increased government interference in the economy. According to Pigot, externalities were a way for the government to enhance resource allocation by levying selected taxes and subsidies. According to Robinson's monopsony theory, the government should set a minimum wage and encourage labor unionism. Many people believe that the government's regulatory role in the economy should be extended based on notions of imperfect competition and monopolistic power. Unnatural monopolies were to be broken up by antitrust actions, while natural monopolies were to be governed as public utilities. Many people were persuaded by the market socialism's economic theory that the government could allocate resources and produce goods and services equally as effectively as private enterprises. According to widely held economic development theories, the government was the sole tool available for the ending vicious cycle of poverty in emerging nations. For example, the Keynesian revolution, its main concept that the government should stabilize the economy through fiscal, monetary and income policies became the new common knowledge. Members of the Chicago School were opposed to the entire line of argument. The school's adherents made little progress in persuading others through the latter's early years. Proponents of the Chicago viewpoint were up against a powerful intellectual and historical tide. Unfortunately, the economic reality of the 1970s called into question numerous aspects of the new economic orthodoxy. The tide ebbed and turned, putting adherents of the Chicago School at the forefront of a new wave of intellectual ideas, with many younger economists following their lead. Thank
Next, what were the major tenets of the Chicago School? The Chicago School of Economics, originally developed by members of the economics department at the University of Chicago, embraced free-market principles. The school's main assumption is rational actor model of human behavior, according to which people generally act to maximize their personal interest and therefore will respond to appropriately designed price incentive. At the community level, a free market inhabited by rational actors will cause research to be distributed based on the most value use. At the core of the Chicago School approach is also seen as laissez-faire, a belief in free market value. Simply put, Chicago School argues that market without government intervention will produce the best outcome for society. The Chicago School approach to antitrust law in the area of regulatory policy provides an excellent demonstration of its general principle. The traditional approach to antitrust regulatory policy is to limit the concentration of market power, such as by dissolving companies that have become monopoly. On the other hand, Chicago School argues that customers are best protected by competition, even if it's the only among a few large companies in industry. Such large companies may gain their dominant market position through profit inventions that provide greater benefit to consumers than markets that are forced by law to include many small companies. Even if a company gains monopoly power, Chicago schools prefer to allow the market to fix problems rather than rely on government intervention, which can lead to greater loss in efficiency. The Chicago school principles have been applied in variety of areas, including market-based and non-market activity. For example, Baker applies the assumption that people make rational economic choice for personal gain to help explain aspects of human behavior not traditionally studied by economics, including crime, racial discrimination, marriage, and family life. In law and economics, Chicago schools argue that rule of law and court decision should be aimed at increasing efficiency. The role of the law is simply to change the incentive of individuals and organizations to achieve that goal. For example, in the fleet of thought, legally, the goal is not only to minimize the cost of incident but also to minimize the cost of incident prevention. Chicago schools have been criticized from many points of view. For example, scholars of behavioral economics challenge the assumption that human beings are maximus of rational self-interest.
Whom the school benefit or seek to benefit. In generally, is Chicago benefiting the community, especially in the corporate. It gives a half benefit to the entire people or community that is in the province of Chicago. They are more concerned with non-profit organization and social enterprise in order to get better and more satisfying profit for all. This way, all parties will care about Chicago, not just waiting for an unknown fate. Service provided by Chicago such as education, healthy foods, quality affordable housing, job training, and more. New economies have also helped reduce regulation and paperwork related with government. As we know, sometimes the rules set by the government are not all able to follow properly. When rules work, Chicago school economists have done research by recognizing and explaining the complexities and subtleties in the relationship between rule and outcome. Also, rules that are too strict can result in unwanted things happen. This is always the case when the society or the person being controlled have to consider the community of their own professional attitude and need to change their habits abruptly. Not only that, it is necessary to also have a model to test the effect of the rules. This can show whether it benefits the people or not. If the way is not able to benefit the people, it can be improved to be better or changed to another way. The view of Chicago and its supporters have helped convince that a market free of government intervention has a great opportunity to grow even faster. Friedman subscribed to monetarism, which emphasized on the importance of monetary policy and transition in the money supply having immediate and lasting effect. The idea has attracted many people and it's recognized around the world for gradually removing government control in an important matter. In fact, Friedman reminds the government cannot mimic the diversity and richness of individual action that have contributed to the great advancement of civilization, whether in science, literature, arts, industry, or whatever. He argued that the uncontrolled growth of the government and the concentrate on the market could treat the freedom and welfare in general of the people in the area. And this way widely demonstrated at the time. If a person have great power and potential but become a tyrant toward his subordinates, he can be subject to any appropriate action as a lesson for him. Chicago view that 1. Monopoly is not important. 2. Advertising produce competitive result. 3. Take advantage of those with high income. The Chicago School Connect 1. Group or individual who rely on the government for subsidy. job regulation, or special legislation find it difficult to success by accepting politics as Chicago school policy. 2. Prevent the government from providing assistance to bankrupt firms or imposing import quotas on foreign goods.
Next, how was the Chicago school valid, useful, or correct in its time? First one is, the Chicago school, in a sense, maintained and strengthened the marginalist tradition at a time when it had diminished popularity. In some ways, the Chicago school preserved and enhanced the marginalist heritage at a time when it was losing a favor. It contributed to the lengthy tradition of classical and neoclassical economics. In other hands, the intellectual scene was dominated by the Keynesian Revolution. This isn't to say that the Keynesian Revolution has come to a close. However, it is to propose that economists have returned to microeconomic analysis in order to broaden their understanding of current concerns, including those that previously appeared to be the sole realm of microeconomic theories. As an example, the analysis of unemployment now includes emphasis on the microeconomic theories of job search and intertemporal substitution between work and leisure. Next, keeping alive the monetary views of Fisher during a period when they easily could have become permanently buried by the weight of Keynesian ideas. The fast inflation of the 1970s and early 1980s shifted the nation's attention away from the Keynesianism principal issue, which is unemployment, toward Fisher and Friedman's priority, which is inflation. This causes many Keynesians advocated for income programs in response to simultaneous inflation and unemployment of the time period, despite the fact that such measures would almost certainly have negative efficiency consequences. The next one is a long-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment was illusory. During its time, the optimistic classical perspective that economic efficiency, price stability, and a natural rate of full employment are mutually attainable was upheld by the neoclassics, who argued that the long-run trade-off between inflation and employment was false.
The last part is which did not become the lasting contribution. Because of the recent vintage of several ideas, the new classical school ideas have already penetrated deeply into the curriculum U.S. University. There are three who contribute in the last tenet, which is Milton Friedman, Robert S. Lucas Jr., and Gary Specker. Firstly is Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman contribute in the long-run belief curve, which is there's a similar distinction between the actual and natural rate of employment, where the natural rate is the acute one when the actual rate of inflation and for expected rate are equal. The next is Robert E. Lucas Jr., Jr., who contribute on the rational expectation and aggregated supplies analysis. For the rational expectation, where the expansionary fiscal in monetary policy produce inflation expectation upward when the government have this policy. Meanwhile, for aggregate supply analysis, where he distinction between short run and long run aggregated supply. The last one is Gary S. Baker, contribute in investment in human capital, where it depend on expected return on one investment, which is they have to randomly join the college to expect for the investment one return.
Last but not least, our major figure that we choose is American economist, which is Robert Emerson Lucas Jr., who was born September 15, 1937 in Yakima, Washington, United States. Robert Emerson Lucas Jr.
earned his BA and PhD degree at the University of Chicago. Robert Lucas Jr., also the American economist who won the 1995 Nobel Prize for Economics due to his contribution. There's a two idea or theory that become the last contribution. Also, the amazing idea is rational expectation. The economic agent from rational expectation about future outcome of current stabilization policy, and the expansionary fiscal and monetary policy produce inflation. People immediately adjust their inflation expectation upward when government undertake this policy. The another theory is Lucas aggregated supply analysis. Lucas analysis distinguish between short-run and long-run aggregated supply. In the neoclassical model, represented by the figure, an unanticipated change in aggregated demand does affect the level of real output, but only temporarily. That's the last contribution of his idea or theory.